Hello and welcome to Across the Pond WNBA. Back for what's going to be week two. We're just finishing off week one right now, and I am joined this week not by Michelle. She is out on wedding duty. Congratulations to Chantel Tremiteri, who got married just the other day. Michelle is been out at that wedding, so is not going to be with us today. Instead, I am joined by one of our new hosts on Across the Pond Sports Network. And in fact, Across the Pond Liberty, Stacia is here. How are you doing, Stacia?
Oh, it's a good Sunday. We got WNBA action, nice weekend. Liberty had a nice win against the Sun, so I'm happy.
And it's Memorial Day weekend, isn't it?
Oh, yes. So no one's going to work tomorrow. Just, fun in the sun is usually how it is. I'm not gonna work tomorrow. I'm just gonna have a nice long walk with my dog, take her to a dog park. Good times.
Yeah, I don't think that is a bad plan whatsoever. And there's no WNBA on Mondays, so it is the perfect time to listen to a podcast while you walk your dog.
Or scroll WNBA Twitter, which is fun.
That can certainly be fun as well, with some of the things we've been seeing over the last couple of days. So, Stacia, you have been covering for us the New York Liberty on Across the Pond Liberty. You've got a couple of episodes under your belt now, and you do that with Kirsten, who's over here in the UK. She's in Glasgow, Scotland. How has that? How has that been going? When instead of just following a league, actually just following down to a team.
It's very fun, and I know that Kirsten and I have liked the Liberty, but they weren't like our team going in. We were both Storm fans. It's easy to transfer to the Liberty for me because of being one of the original eight. So I've watched him and tracked him, and it's nice to have them being kind of like on the come up again because they've had such dedicated fans through the whole time that they've been in the league, and they need a championship. And also, Stewie transferred. It's transferred, you know, got her contract and moved back to her home state, New York. So when you're a Storm fan and Stewie, you have to be a Stewie fan, and now she's in New York. It's easy to transfer like the love, and all the players that they have, I've liked for years and followed in college. So it's very easy to be a Liberty fan this season. Um, and I am obviously joining a little bit of the bandwagon, even though I've always rooted for them. But it's easy to hop on the bandwagon right now for the Liberty, and they did not disappoint yesterday.
So the Liberty obviously made there was more than just Brianna Stewart that moved across. We had Courtney Vandersloot, Jonquel Jones, like those were some big names, and they'd already got Stephanie Dawson last year as well, which I thought was a great move because she was just coming off the back of a championship win with the Sky. So it looks as though like the pieces that Sandy and the Liberty have put together over this last 2 years have really kind of culminated in this season. But can they go all the way and win a championship this year?
That is the question that I'm not going to even attempt to answer. All I do know is I'm going to call out you and Samantha on your Aces podcast. Aces are not going to be undefeated. I'm going to be super emphasize that. If that happens, everybody would lose their minds and it would be phenomenal. It's not going to happen. Yeah, we're gonna get a few. The Liberty are gonna get a few. So I'm already gonna set the floor for talking crap for you guys. It's not gonna happen. But yeah, they have all the pieces. They were having the building blocks before. Kirsten and I talked about this I think, on the first episode. I remember when they were they got the number one draft pick in the lottery, not even the draft. And so everybody knew they were going to pick Sabrina. So you have a core piece and a franchise player with her when they got the lottery pick for number one. And it was obvious, and that kind of set the turnaround. Of course, she goes and gets injured in the wobble, which kind of backtracks it. But when you're 2-20 in the wobble, then you're still going to have chances for draft picks. And then they made the trades and they made the playoffs the last 2 years. So everything is on the up and up. So the future is bright for the Liberty. They've got such an amazing core. And you mentioned Steph Dolson. So I have to say, one of my favorite Steph Dolson facts is she was the only player in 2021 to win a WNBA championship and an Olympic gold medal because no one else on the Sky was on the Olympic team and Steph was on the 3-on-3 team. So I love you talk about a year for Steph Dolson, and she was enjoying it. And if you ever just want to just smile, just follow Big Mama Steph on Instagram because it's the greatest, most entertaining thing there is.
She is absolutely hilarious, and you're right. I mean, I remember that year because she won that gold medal with Kelsey Plum from the Aces, and it was such a good team. Like seriously, a good team that the US put together for that, which was good because it was like the first time that that format had been tried out in the Olympics.
Well, yeah, and then Alicia Gray and was great, and then they had Jackie Young, so another one of your aces players, go aces, because, Katie Lou got hurt, so then Jackie was or Katie Lou got COVID, I think. So it stinks for her because she was such a good three-point shooter, and her length would have been great on that team. I think they would have won no matter what. But also awesome for Jackie because you literally have 2 number 1 picks, for the Aces with Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum on that 3-on-3 team, and then Big Mama Steph just setting all the screens, and Holly Rowe has said in some Instagram stories post about how no one gets wider than Steph Dolson on a screen. So you're doing that in 3-on-3. You have the lefties that are going to go score and the athleticism of Jackie Young. Oh my gosh, what an athletic build! Um, so it was fantastic to watch, and of course the ultimate dynasty. Even though it wasn't Steph, the fact that they got their 7th Olympic gold medal, which is phenomenal for everybody that was on the Olympic team. It was just a nice 2021.
What I loved that year was the fact that the USA team, the full team, actually were beaten by the WNBA team. Like that was absolutely hilarious because they did the change up for All Star that year, and that was just it was so much fun. I think Janquil Jones, like her famous quote now, "That's as close as I'll get to winning a gold medal," is beating them, and that was even before the tournament happened.
Oh, yeah, and then I think they lost to Australia before because they hadn't had Chris and I talked about this in the Liberty podcast about the chemistry wasn't there because they hadn't had time to play with each other, and earlier that season or not earlier that season because it was in 2021 when that happened. In 2020 or 2019, they played Oregon at Oregon, and Oregon was a college team that beat them. So there was, so much motivation, but they weren't gonna lose a gold medal, they just needed a little bit of time, like I do not see myself living where they don't win a gold medal in the Olympics. Um, I mean, world prove me wrong, but I just don't see how this team can't be super dominant throughout my lifetime. So,
So
challenge to the world.
we have seen it on the men's side where
No, no, we're talking
they
about the
did
women,
lose.
James.
I know we are,
Yeah.
but like USA basketball, and Michelle has spoken to this in the past. USA basketball going with a target of gold medal every tournament they enter because
Yeah.
that's the mindset that they go in with. But you know, the mindset has been pushed. And people expected them to win that year too. So, but I'm sure like Team USA have learned from that mistake from both like for both sides to make sure that that doesn't happen again. To be fair,
Yeah. Yeah, I just it's just it's such a big country. We have so many athletes to choose from. I mean, the WNBA All-Stars that played against them to beat them could have won a gold medal. It's just I'm
yeah.
very cocky when it comes to the US women's basketball team.
Oh,
So,
I'd never have guessed.
I never would have guessed. Never would have guessed.
Michelle was
They're
exactly the same.
oh, yeah. They're excellent. It was the only gold medal they have at like, what, 1992, they got a bronze, Um, yeah, but it's just they're phenomenal. It's one of the greatest dynasties in sports, I will say, because to put together that talent and to make it work every 4 years when you don't have as much time to prep as they have because the W has been here since the '96 team that started it, they're phenomenal. So, I mean, that's why the W is such a hard league to get into because of all the phenomenal players.
It is indeed. Now, we're talking history, so let's get into your history of basketball. And you know, you've got some famous meetups and stuff that you've done that you've told me about. But what initially was like basketball's my thing.
It started when I was very, very young. My mom constantly took me to basketball games. In 1992, I was 7 years old. Our high school basketball team, the boys, were in the state finals, and we were there. It was 25 minutes away, and she's gonna take me to go watch it. And I still remember our point guard, Jordy Canfield, that I loved. His cousin was in my class, adored him. They won the state title. It's the only state title our boys have ever had. The girls' side has gotten 3rd a couple times, and it started the year after I graduated. But my mom took me to games, and then we watched games, and then my dad took me to games. And my birthday's in March, so my dad for my birthday and my mom for my birthday would take me to games because we had the Big 8 tournament before it was the Big 12. The Big 8 tournament was 25 minutes away from where I grew up in Salina. So I went there, and stupidly, when I was a kid, I got all the mascots to autograph my program. Not players, mascots. And we drove one time, I had my mom literally drive me in a snowstorm because I wanted to go see the University of Kansas, which WNIT champs this year in women's college basketball play, and then they got slaughtered by Colorado. Um, I remember that. Yeah, but we drove in snow, ended up in a ditch, and it just carried on from there. My mom has been the person that I've seen the most games with. We had great basketball around where we lived, and we have traveled across the country to see teams. I think the last count I have seen, I want to say 75 NCAA tournament games, not conference tournament games, but NCAA tournament games. And I live in Kansas, and me going to those, I mean, if you ever want to know where all my money goes, it goes to women's college basketball. Went to the Final Four this year. That was my 6th that I've been to. Um, this is what I do. This is what I love. That's where I go. I mean, yeah, it all started when I was younger, just because I went with it and loved it and loved playing on the playground.
One question that I ask people when they live in a college town that doesn't have a professional basketball team is, we know that people will turn out for college basketball. If we were to implant or put an expansion team in Kansas, would people turn out for a team?
That is a very tough question because the Kansas men's team won the national championship in 2022. Everybody shows up for them. They are proven winners. They've won the Big 12 so many times and have 6 national championships starting in 1922. The women this year, people didn't show up as much as I would have liked them to, and the WNIT championship this year was when the Final Four happened. So it broke my heart to not be here to see the KU women win a WNIT championship. But I was watching LSU beat Virginia Tech and Iowa beat South Carolina, so I'm not disappointed. But, almost 12,000 fans came for that game. There was close to 8,000 in the semifinals because Lawrence wants basketball. Now, when it comes to Kansas City, I think they'll support winners. We have a see, and then I have my Kansas City Current. We have a professional women's soccer team in Kansas City that are building momentum, and people are, jumping in that. It helps that Patrick Mahomes, who is a quarterback for the Chiefs, is a owner. He's the 4th owner, and so they've won, and they've kind of built it from the ground up because of all the support they've put into women. I think it would be difficult right now, but if there were local talent that were around, I think people would show up eventually, but right now, I don't think so as much. Um, Soccer's pretty big in Kansas City, and men's basketball is big. Now, if there was a professional men's team in Kansas City, originally it was the Kansas City Kings, and they are now in Sacramento. I feel like that would be supported, but it takes a little bit right now for Kansas women because the KU women finally got people to show out just because they were in a final, and that was something to do on a Saturday, and I think that everybody was like, "Oh, they're winning. They're at home." That also helps. WNIT is played at host sites instead of going anywhere. So people showed up for that, and it was so beautiful to see. But I think we're a little way off from people showing up for Kansas City because the Big 12 tournament is in Kansas City, and the teams that are there more than any other team are the Iowa State fans. They are very intense, but very supportive because there's no professional teams in Iowa, so they back all their college teams, but they also have local talent that are there to support. So that would be a big thing. Um, Going back to support for Kansas, I grew up in early 2000s. Kansas State was very good because they had Kansas girls, Kansas women playing on their team, and they were ranked in the top 10 consistently. They had sellouts all the time because people want to see their local girls grow up and just be these amazing basketball players. And so that was supported, but I still think we're a long way off,
Oh, well,
unfortunately. Yeah.
maybe someday.
Someday.
Once
Fingers
once we get
crossed.
some expansion teams,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
um, going back to you and your love for the game, obviously you've been to a few games,
A few
but
games, yeah.
is there one game in particular that kind of stands out for you as like one that you just cannot forget?
Okay, so my mom listens to podcasts, and called her out before. So the second Final Four we went to was in 2006. So any fans are aware of 2006 was the second national championship game that went to overtime. I will come up with all the facts. The first one was Dawn Staley versus Tennessee in 1991, and Virginia lost to Tennessee. Tennessee beat Virginia, and Dawn Staley was the only most outstanding player from a losing team ever in Final Four history. So we got the second. It's only been two overtime games in a national championship game, several overtime games in Final Four, and it was Maryland versus Duke. It was Christy Tolliver hitting a 3-point shot to send it into overtime. And I was in the Maryland section, and my mom was like, "This is a blast. These young kids, because they were young, two sophomores, two freshmen, one junior were the starters on that team." And I still remember it because in the Maryland section, I remember crouching down and then exploding when she made it. And it was so exciting. And Maryland that year was undefeated in overtime. So when they sent it to overtime, those kids knew they were gonna win, and I think everybody could feel it, and it was so close in overtime, and it's unfortunate because Gail Gestincourse and Duke were so good and never got a national title, during her tenure there, which was disappointing for them, but it was just one of the most unforgettable games ever. It's just the shot. It was the shot. There is another one, but that's the best. Also, I was drinking with my mom in Boston. That also was very, very fun. We went to Cheers, we had a beer. It was good times. Um, and Boston was very good at hosting a Final Four. We got off the train, people had flyers handed us to us. Everything was great about that whole trip. But to cap it off with an overtime national championship game, one of only two ever, it was a shot. It was great. Beautiful. So every time I see Christy Tolliver, I'm like, hit that fadeaway three, girl. Good job.
This is the thing, like, because we in the UK, we don't understand the fascination with college sports here in the UK. Like, we have universities and colleges and stuff, obviously, but like they're for academics, not really so much for sports. So, like, whenever like you see it on TV and stuff, and you see, because you talked about the fans, like of Iowa, but when you see these college fans, and I'm not talking like kids that are like 20, 21, 22. I'm talking about you see adults in the stands because they've obviously went to that college when they were a kid and they've kind of grown up and alumni and all this kind of stuff. But when you see those fans like and they erupt or you see the rushes onto the court, it's intense. Like we just don't see stuff like that in the UK.
It I think when it comes to college athletics, everybody's so young and you feel like a part of it because everybody's so young. And before NIL, everybody's just playing to play. I mean, I know you get a free education with the scholarships, but some walk-ons don't. And so that kind of like love transcends and it's where you live. So there's not pro teams everywhere. Like, Kansas doesn't have pro basketball. There are other pro sports, but it doesn't. and I'm close to Kansas City, so Missouri side doesn't have professional basketball, Iowa doesn't have it. So, this is your team, and you have it for all the years, and when you get, like, that one shot, you just feel it in your soul, and, I mean, there's a couple games where I can tell you, like, heartbreak I've felt, um, especially with those Kansas State teams in the early 2000s. There was one game in particular where I remember, like, I wanna cry, but I'm in public, so I can't do it, because I'd played high school sports against the players that were out there, so you feel like you know them, and then they have so many people that are around their hometowns in the stands, and so it just kinda becomes like this thing that just is in you, is about the best way to say it, and just hang on. In professional teams, the money, they come and go. You get 4 years with certain people, and it's like, "Oh, this is a moment," and so you love the moments. I mean, I'm a sucker for the moments.
Now, who is the most inspiring person through your journey that you have met, and even if it's a small interaction, but someone who kind of left a mark?
I think the best person is it's a Kansas girl. I mean, again, we have 2 Kansas players, 2 women from Kansas. One is Lynette Woodard that was from Wichita and played at University of Kansas, that is still the all-time Division I leading scorer, not NCAA, because she played in AIAW. I met her, she was lovely. Um, Showed her a picture of me and Pat Summitt, and she was like, "Aw." So, love her. But for me, it's Jackie Stiles. Jackie Stiles, before Kelsey Plum broke the NCAA Division I scoring mark, Jackie Stiles held it. She's from the tiniest town in Kansas. This woman shot not shot, made 1,000 shots a day. Her dad was a high school basketball coach. She literally worked herself out of her career because of how much she worked that she wore her body down. But her status in Kansas is legendary. Yeah. She took a mid-major team in 2001 to the Final Four, and there hasn't been a mid-major team since that has made it to a Final Four. If you talk to players that played around Jackie, she was amazing. She's 5'8", her jump shot is amazing. There's so many players that shoot threes or just drive to the hoop. Jackie had a jump shot that you could stop on a dime and no one would touch. And she's just a person that worked herself into being a professional basketball player. She played for the Portland Fire, won Rookie of the Year, probably shouldn't have won it. Lauren Jackson probably should have won it, but everybody liked Jackie, so Jackie won it. Her first year in the W and was the 4th round pick. I could tell you a million stats about Jackie. I've met her 4 times, get a picture every time. I'm always just happy. She's always literally the nicest person to talk to. And she's a Kansas girl, and we love her. The legend of Jackie Stiles is it's so much so that we went to a parade after they made it to the Final Four, my friend and I did, and it was on April 14th, and we just drove there just to go meet her for the second time for me, because I met her at a basketball camp. Got a picture with her, and my friend and I still call each other and leave each other messages on April 14th. We just call it 414, and we say, "Happy 414," because we just went and did that because we had nothing else to do because we didn't have smartphones, and, yeah, it's very weird. That's a basketball obsession. If you talk to anybody around me during that time, I was obsessed with Jackie Stiles. Still am. She's wonderful.
Wow. Now, um, obviously, these players that you've seen in college, not all of them obviously make it to the WNBA. We've seen that this preseason with the amount of players that got waived. But when you're at these college games, are you like, definitely destined for WNBA? Yep, definitely destined for WNBA. Or are you just kind of obviously in the moment, kind of like, wow, this is a really good player. But like, because we see so many players and so much talent in the States that there just isn't enough spots for them all to be there.
I I can do both. Um, I'm, like, on a good day, 5'4". So, I love an intelligent player that does all the little things, and also a player that I see that I would hate to be playing against, that I would love to have on my team. Those are type of players that I love for college, that that this is it for them. And then there's those other ones be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see her play in the W." And I'm gonna use the Iowa ones because everybody watched Iowa this year because of Caitlin Clark. Everybody knows Caitlin Clark is just gonna be amazing. Whoever if she goes pro, she says she doesn't know about her COVID year. I think she's gonna be pro after next year. Whoever gets the number 1 pick next year is gonna have a franchise player with Caitlin Clark. But my player on that Iowa team that I love is McKenna Warnock, and she was just one of those that and she's done. She had a COVID year. She's going to dental school. I love her. She got the offensive rebound, and they got out rebounded 49-25. Iowa did against South Carolina, and she got the offensive rebound, and that was the first second that I thought Iowa was going to win because I still thought South Carolina was going to pull it out. And when Warnock, and I'm like Warnock, yes, that's her. Those role players that just do the things that this is the love that they have. I see both, and being that I'm in the Big 12 area, they're schools that don't get as much recognition, now because like, Baylor isn't like, Kim Mulkey's gone. Baylor's starting to, like, rebuild and be big again. You can see all the players that, "Oh, dang it, I don't like you, but I wish you were on our team." And then there's other ones where it's like, "You may have a shot." So I'm both, and it's fun to see that because it's just love of the game.
Oh no, it totally is, and you can tell from listening to you now. WNBA, obviously you don't have a team anywhere near you,
Nope.
really, for about 10 states, east or west. But how how does the WNBA impact? Because obviously they're trying to make it a national game, and they're trying to get people across the country engaged in the WNBA, much like they do for the NBA. But what is it that they're kind of lacking in that kind of fan engagement that outside the cities that have teams? Because at the moment, yes, you've got ESPN and all these things, but like they just do we need to have more travel in preseason? Like we've seen the game in Canada up in Toronto. Now, obviously, that's a test run for an expansion team, but like, would it be like a good idea to see some more fan engagement by maybe putting preseason games kind of in different cities? Would that kind of work, or is there something else?
I think that would just increase fan engagement. They did that in Wichita with those K-State players in the early 2000s because they had a couple players that were drafted from Kansas State, and they played on their teams in Wichita, and people showed up because, again, the local girls. So that would be something in like an Iowa City that you could do because Iowans are going to show up. I don't think there's ever going to be a team in Iowa, but getting it to markets where you're not normally at is going to be useful. And I talked to someone. I umpired softball today. There was a team there from South Dakota, and I said that I went up to Sioux Falls for a regional they had in 2016. And the South Dakota fans show up. They have a mid-major, and they have 2 teams in South Dakota and South Dakota State, and those fans travel and support. Now, there's not a major city that would attract it, but you need that. Um, but I think one of the biggest things to grow the league was last year at the Final Four, I was in Minneapolis, and there was a wonderful panel, and Lasia Clarendon was on the panel, and they are now playing for the Los Angeles Sparks. They talked about access to apparel, and you said this on your Las Vegas Aces podcast, that it's only in Mandalay Bay where you could get actual, like, apparel and Aces jerseys. Sometimes having stuff online, you have to go find it, where if it's in a store and you can see it, that brings more awareness. In Lawrence, the Kansas City Current, there's like their section is this big, and they're a professional team that made it to a final of the league last year, and they have this much stuff for women's sports in there. For the women's professional team, I'm like, they're 45 minutes away. We need more access to it in actual stores, so then people can have the stuff, and then more national exposure. It has to keep happening with putting it on ESPN and ABC, and then CBS had the Liberty Sun game in the afternoon. That needs to be out there. It's if people don't have to, like, go find it all the time, if they can click on it, that would be amazing. And I know Roku has just done that with a women's sports zone. So it's like, "Oh, women's sports. I'm gonna go and click and find this." So the more exposure would be the biggest thing for the league, and it also comes with apparel. So not just sitting it in cities, it just needs to be on our screens more, and it's gotta keep growing the league. I mean, everybody knows this, it just has to happen, but I want apparel in stores. I want apparel in stores. I don't wanna pay shipping. I wanna go to a store and buy something. I mean, I got this W shirt shipped to me from Breaking Tea. I love them. I'm just a sponsor right now for all these other things. But yeah, it needs to have easier access for people.
I agree. I mean, when I was in the States in February, like, I got this, up in Portland, uh, like and you're talking about professional soccer teams, like, they've got the new Portland team out there, and they had the jersey. They had 1 jersey.
The Thorns are the best. I hate to say it. Like, they're just consistently so good, which drives me insane, but I also love them. Yeah.
I love their jerseys. Their jerseys look cool. They just didn't have one in my size
Oh, yeah.
because they had 1 jersey, and it was a medium, and I have not been a medium since I was about 12 years old, so that just wasn't gonna work. But WNBA style in terms of getting apparel out there, I think you're right, like, I think that's definitely something that has to be done, like, say, I had that trip to Vegas, nowhere could you buy anything, and I think that's sad, and I've
Yeah.
always said that the WNBA is terrible at marketing itself. It is, and I hate to call it a product, but at the end of the day, that's what the WNBA is, it's a product, and I think they need to be doing more to push that out to people because I think people are interested in it, but like you said, it's so difficult to find that people just give up because people want something that is there, and they just boom, it's in front of them. Whereas if it's not, they're like, "Oh, well, I'll go and watch something else that is in front of me." And I think that's the problem we have just now.
Yeah. Perfect example. The Final Four was in Minneapolis in 2022. South Carolina won it. So it's at the Target Center where the Timberwolves and the Lynx play. They literally had the whole store because it was the Timberwolves season. It was all Timberwolves, and then very little Lynx apparel. I bought a shirt because I wanted to buy a shirt, but it wasn't much. And I asked the woman who was at the store. I said, "Why isn't there more Lynx stuff?" And she goes, "Oh, because it's not their season." And I said, "This is a women's Final Four with women's basketball fans. This would be a time to pull out the women's merchandise." She goes, "I know." That's it. Like, we were literally in your arena. Get your merch out. Yeah, I bought a few things. I wanted to buy more, especially because Sweet Sylvia Fowles was retiring. I may have bought a jersey, but it wasn't there. But if it was in front of me, I'm like, "Ooh, it's right there. It's right there. It's right there." These are the things that just need to be better, and it's not hard to see that. It was literally right there. Come on, you know? Yeah, so that is extremely frustrating, but it is getting better, but it's these baby steps just need to keep increasing. They need to
I
become like leaps.
I think we're 20, what, 27 now, so, like,
Yeah.
let's maybe have a toddler step or something. Um, that would sure be nice. Now, the WNBA has made big strides in TV and stuff, like and, like, we see this every year, like, it's like a 19 to 20% increase in viewership. The WNBA had more viewership than MLS last year,
Yep.
and MLS has more games on TV, which is insane. So, surely somebody at ESPN, at least ESPN, is looking at the numbers and being like, "Maybe there is something here." Because it's like we're all telling them that there is something there, but they're just not getting it.
And that's it just needs to keep we just gotta just, I don't know, call, hammer him, put it on Twitter, be like, "More, more, more." Ari Chambers, that runs Highlight Her, I love all her content. She has a tweet that I believe is, "The WNBA is so important." She literally that's kind of the tweet, and it kinda gets retweeted and on social media platforms all the time, and it would be even more important if it was out there more, and these are the things that need to be prevalent for young girls because we need to have more female role models and female role models that don't look like, the stereotypical. I mean, I have blonde hair right now, it's fake, but I mean, they're like, your apple pie neighbor girl, like, I want to see female role models that have tattoos, that have different color hair, that have athletic bodies, that are tall, that do things to make sure that, little girls can go and play and don't feel alone and can do this. I mean, it's a very small percentage that can because it's such a small league, but she just needs to be out there more. I mean, Michelle's 6'5", and she didn't, when she started playing, she didn't have the W. Just think how much more motivating that could have been if it would have been there and more prevalent. It's like, "Oh, yeah, it's here. Oh, yeah, now it's everywhere. Yeah, I'm gonna do that." Instead of being like, "Oh, maybe. Oh, okay." Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
So the need is that we need more, more,
We
more,
need
more,
more, more,
more, more, more.
more, more, more.
Talking about more, you have more liberty this year than ever before, with the acquisitions that the team have made. Uh, Is is the future, because I look at Liberty, and yes, they've brought in all these players, and sometimes you have to find this balance. There's one balance that says you kind of build through the draft, and you'll pick up the odd player, but then there's this thing where, oh, let's just put a super team together. Sandy, she kind of fired back in a media conference the other day. I think it was Friday, where she doesn't consider them a super team. But as fans, we want super teams, and we want our team to be the super team. Are they a super team? Because I would say they're on the cusp, but like I don't think they are a super. And I because I know what you're going to clap back with the Aces. I don't think the Aces are a super team either.
I think that everybody wants to have a label for things, and having these 2 teams that have such amazing all-stars on them and MVPs and champions just makes it easy to just be like, "Oh, super team," because each team has many players that everybody knows. That is huge on that, is they're gathering together, people know these players. So the knowledge of the players, I think, makes people say super team because they're aware of all of them. But I Vegas, there hasn't been a repeat champion in the W since the Sparks, I believe in 2000 and 2002. So, I mean, I thought the Sky had a shot last year and then they just fizzled out against the Sun. And them versus the Aces would have been awesome, even though the Sun versus the Aces was good because the Sky had like a leg up on the Aces in like their head to heads. But I don't think that there's anyone that's a super team. I think that we all want them to be. We want these two super teams to meet because that could be huge for the WNBA for ratings because they're powerhouses. They have the potential to be powerhouses. Um, but I'm good with what Sandy said about no, they're not because until you have a dynasty of multiple championships in a quick little bit, like even the Lynx, as good as they were in the 2010s, they never went back to back. They did like every odd year, but they didn't go. And so, unless you can win a couple in a row and are there, you're not a super team, but you definitely look like a super team, would be how I would phrase it. You look like you'd be a super team. Now you gotta prove it.
I think the biggest threat for the Liberty is this unsung team that really, unless they're playing against the Liberty or unless they're playing against the Aces, they don't get much talk. And that is the Connecticut Sun. Like I've said for a couple of years now, the Connecticut Sun are like the such a proficient team. Like it's obviously especially defensively, like we've seen through their first 3 games. Like they are so proficient. Their concentration on defense. I've not seen anything else like it this season yet. They just look so turned on. I know they lost to Liberty the other night, but even still, like they fought for every single ball. Is the Sun, who don't get much media coverage, is that an advantage to the Sun because like they don't feel that kind of pressure because they're not in New York?
I think yes, from my perspective, not probably not from their perspective because they know how good they are. But I mean, the Sun have been in 2 finals in the past, what, 3 years? And that 2019 final with them and the Mystics, even though the Mystics were wonderful that year when it came to assists per game, and Deladon had her 90-50-40 season, which like, they've been there. They've been in the semis. They've had these teams. They know what it takes to win, but, yeah, they need to win one. It's hard to say that because there's so few teams, it's hard to win a championship, but I think it's motivating for them just because they can come in and just, like, you know, punch you in the face, it's no pun intended, but just yeah, the proficiency that they have is outstanding, and they wanna be good defensively. They wanna mess you up in the right way. Like, talking about those players that do all the little things that I do not wanna be playing against any players from the Sun. Like, I was like, "I want them all on my team. I don't wanna go against them. Love you guys," but I'd be like, "Oh, here you go." Like, it just no. They just had that tenacity. So, yeah, they're one of those teams, and I mean, I said this earlier with, I think on the first Liberty podcast, like, them and the Mystics, but then there's the other teams in the league. Dallas is young, they're hungry, and if Satu is healthy, they got Natasha Howard and then Enrique healthy. Those 3 could be a problem, and then everybody's talking about how everybody left Chicago. I'm ready to see how much Chicago is coming up, and those 2 are playing currently as we're talking, and I think that there's gonna be a lot of fire with all these other teams beating each other that aren't super teams, but yeah, but that Sun, I it's always dangerous. For the past 5 years, dangerous, dangerous.
But so under thought of, I think, in the media, and I think they get a bit of a they get kind of blanked by the media, which is sad, unless they're like I say, they're playing Liberty or Aces or Sparks or whoever, like one of the big market teams. One player that I'm missing this year, I've just thought this just now, 'cause when you were talking about the Sky and the exodus of players that left the Sky, was Emma Messiman. Like she's decided that she's taken some time because her team Fenerbahce in Turkey did so well, made Eurobasket and all this kind of stuff. And I'm kind of gutted that she's not in the league this year because she's awesome. And like, if you wanted someone with experience for that Chicago Sky team, you couldn't ask for someone better, who's such level-headed as well.
Yeah, and she had a great run we talked about the Olympics earlier, she had a great run at the Olympics, and then Belgium just kind of, like, didn't do well when the bracket play started. But Miesseman, 2019, she was the finals MVP. Um, and not only her basketball skills about how she does everything and can do everything, she speaks multiple languages, and she also has a little bit of a hearing disability. So, I'm an American, we don't speak any so many Americans don't speak another language, which I am guilty of, and so even just that makes me love her and is impressive. Um, yeah, I love Emma Mieseman, and that is a heartbreaker. She's a great one. Any team that would get her would would just adore her. I mean, the Mystics in the Wubble, I think Mieseman helped them even make it to the playoffs, the 8 seed when Deladon, couldn't go down there, like, things like that, and she was beat up. I remember seeing, I think, an Instagram story of her legs. I think Holly did that one too, and just how beat up she is, and everybody gets beat up in the league, but I just remember that. I was like, "I don't know if there's, like, 3 inches of her legs that we were seeing that didn't have a bruise just, like, in another spot." So, yep, gutted about Misa, but, you know, Talia Copper I'm sorry, Kalia Copper is just having a great year, and she's an all-star, and again, another finals MVP. So Chicago's good to go. There's another fighter right there. Ooh, Copper coming up. You got Chance the Rapper wearing your jersey. You're for real.
One last question on the Liberty. You got
Okay.
Courtney Vandersloot. Now, usually with Courtney Vandersloot, there's a second player that comes with that,
Yeah.
because they kind of come as a package. But this year, Ali Quigley's taken a year out.
Mhm.
Um, and she said this quite early, to be fair. This is not new news. This is something that was reported last year at the end of the season that she was going to be taking a year out, and that was it. Does Hallie Quigley have a spot in the Liberty next year?
She's one of the greatest three-point shooters in the history of the W. Next year, she will turn I think she was born in '86, so I'm mathing right now. She'll be 38. mean, she's not gonna I mean, she will definitely be back in shape, so the shape's not an issue. Um, I'm trying to think who you would cut. Maybe? I don't know. That's oh, there's so many things that we don't know that we're not privy to. I say that you don't and this is where I lean towards more of a yes than a no, because the Liberty love the three-point ball, and so let's get the three-point all-star three-point shooting champ, four-time, in there, and let's just shoot some more threes. Just come in for 15 minutes and just make a couple of threes, then go sit. Yeah. It wouldn't be a bad move. I'm wondering about cap space of how that would work and who would get cut, but I lean more towards yes, because she didn't say she's retiring, so I'd lean more towards yes. Um, but I was also wondering if Sloot was gonna go to Seattle because she's from there, and Allie's from Chicago, so they spent time where Allie grew up. Are they gonna go to where Sloot grew up at some point as the package deal? That was a question that was on my mind, this offseason, but it's hard to say no to a proven excellent shooter, especially if she gets, like, a one-year contract. That would be another thing too. Depending on how long the contract is, I lean more towards yes, but who knows? Who knows?
Could be fun to see them play next year together in New York for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so one big thing that happened yesterday, the Las Vegas Aces unveiled their banner. They got their rings. There was lots of pomp and circumstance in Vegas, and a lot of smiles, obviously. One thing I liked about the banner was, and I don't think I've seen this in many sports. Now, American sports are the only ones that do banners, by the way. Us in the UK, we just kind of get a trophy and go home and then start the next season.
We love to flaunt our accomplishments, James. You gotta keep it up
Very
there
much.
forever. Yeah.
But one thing I do like about the banner is that all the players' names are around the side of the banner, like they're along the edge of the banner. And I thought that's so cool because, sometimes you look at these banners and you're like, I'm going to have to Google who was on that team that year. Um, but it's so cool that they've got the team, they've got the players up there. The rings look amazing, by the way. And obviously they were flaunting them as much as they possibly could. And then they went out and had a basketball game against the Sparks, but I wouldn't really say that was a basketball game. It was more like a mugging. So I wouldn't even say it was a blowout. It was like an absolute mugging. Um, how dominant or how scary do the Aces look this season so far? Given like New York have obviously brought in a lot of pieces, whereas really the Aces have lost one and replaced it.
I think they're scary because their transition game is phenomenal, but what leads to their transition game is how much they wanna mess you up defensively. We talk about the Sun being very aggressive and always going for the and being just absolute and I just keep using the word that Michelle used last year is, like, kinda like bullies. The Sun, like, wanna come up and be like, "We're ready. Yeah, what's up?" I think Vegas loves the transition game, and it starts from just an excellent defense. Literally, Chelsea Gray, there was a loose ball and just like slapped it up the court in their game because it's like, yeah, here we go. We're up there. Let's go. Slapped it, which is an assist in my mind. You had control. You made the pass with the slap, slap the ball up there. But if they just have like commit to defense, it's going to be so hard to outscore them with all the pieces they have. And that's why I must switch it to the Liberty now. That's what was so great about the Liberty in the second half against the Sun, because the Liberty picked up their defense. So when we have the Aces versus the Liberty, whoever wants to bring it the most on defense, and then how much that defense leads to transition buckets, that's who's going to win the game, in my mind, right now. We'll see what happens in when they do play, but that's what I want to see is just the commitment to defense for both teams. So the Aces do that. Oh gosh. The Liberty do that. Oh gosh. Like those are the things that are going to be the intangibles. And bring it back to Michelle and stuff about Pat Summit. You know, hey, if you're having an off night shooting, that doesn't affect your defense tenacity and how you rebound the ball. Defense and rebounding, the cornerstone of Pat Summit Tennessee basketball. So those are really going to be the things going back to those basics that I'm looking forward to seeing from both these teams, super teams, this year, because they're gonna score. So who's gonna commit to stopping part of the scoring? You're not gonna do it completely, but who's gonna commit to stopping and getting those transition baskets?
Very much so. Now, last thing then before we get you out on this, um, any big highlight from the first week of the season?
I'm gonna go back to Stewie, just transition threes and Stewie's 45. The highlight is Stewie's 45. The highlight is Stewie's 45. The other highlight is just a major team highlight and just how much, even though the Aces only played 2 games so far, and how much the Aces are just scoring, because it's, again, fun to watch, and these are the things that are gonna bring people to the game, is Stewie's got 45 points, oh my gosh, 45 points in 3 quarters, but I mean, the Aces team basketball, yes, Stewie's 45. Stewie's 45 is the highlight so far. You come home, your first game in New York that you've played in your home state, like, as a New York player, yeah, Stewie.
Tuesday. Awesome. Now, everyone, you can listen to Across the Pond Liberty with Stacia and with Kirsten as well. Every week, they're coming at you with a new episode covering the team. Hopefully, we've got some guests coming up for them, and it's going to be a full on season, I think, for the Liberty as well. So, looking very much forward to that all season. Michelle will be back next week. We also have Across the Pond Aces as well. Give them a plug or me a plug. So you can join us on that podcast as well. And obviously across the pond WNBA on social media. And we will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Right.